Mến chào tất cả quý vị anh chị em. Hôm nay là ngày 12 tháng 8 năm 2024, 11 giờ 26 phút buổi sáng giờ California, cũng như là bữa trưa rồi. Hôm nay là cái poll ngày 12 mới nhất để đi ra. Đây là mình lấy cái poll mới khác, cái poll mấy bữa trước. Không, mình không có lấy cùng một cái poll, nó không có công bằng đó. Thì những cái poll này đó, nó tổng cộng lại hết tất cả những cái poll rồi nó cho cái điểm. Đó là nếu mà làm mà tổng thống và đắc cử thì còn 270 phiếu cử tri đoàn thì sẽ thắng. Rồi sau đây thì mình sẽ cho quý vị xem cái poll, thì nó nói tiếng Anh, tuy nhiên ở dưới thì mình có bỏ phần tiếng Việt vô để quý vị anh chị xem mà cũng dễ, không cần tiếng Anh tiếng Việt gì cả. Mình coi cái poll tổng cộng cuối cùng là như thế nào. Dạ, xin mời quý anh chị em theo dõi.
Leads Trump by 2% according to the latest average from 538. But do not count Trump out just yet, as some of the moves he's making in the swing states may shock you. After all, it's the Electoral College that ultimately decides the next president, not the national vote. So let's create a 2024 presidential election map based on the most recent polls in all 50 states. Starting with the safe states that present a margin of 15 points or higher for the respective candidate, the states we count as deep blue states are California, Connecticut, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, Vermont, D.C., and Delaware. The Democratic Party starts the race with 95 electoral points. The safe states for Trump are North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Alaska, Idaho, Montana, West Virginia.
Here's how auto mechanics remove car scratches in just 90 seconds or less. This simple but brilliant trick is taking the US by storm. It creates a scratch-free look on any surface, meaning you'll never have to worry about those marks again. An auto mechanic from Michigan has just revolutionized the car care industry with a tool that removes car scratches in record time. For years, Jake watched as car owners struggle with costly scratch repairs. Competitors charged hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars for fixes that could be done in minutes. Determined to find an effective alternative, Jake decided to take matters into his own hands. Blessed with years of technical experience and a genuine desire to help car owners, Jake started experimenting with common scratch repair methods. After 2 years of research and testing many different prototypes, he discovered a key thing that changed the industry forever. Jake pinpointed the cutting-edge technology that scuffs away all the excess metal.
Utah, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Kentucky, Alabama, Missouri, Tennessee, Maine's 2nd District, Nebraska at large, and its 1st and 3rd districts. So the GOP starts slightly behind with 88 points, but these are only the safe states. And now we'll fill in the likely states, where the representative candidate has a lead between 7 and 15 points. Starting with the blue side, a state that has voted Democratic for the past 4 consecutive elections, Colorado. Thus, it comes to no surprise that the most recent polling data shows a 10-point margin to the DNC. Another long-lasting Democratic state joining this category is Illinois. The Prairie State has been Democratic since 1992 and currently shows a 13-point margin for the DNC, according to the latest Biden poll by John Zogby Strategies. However, we must consider that Kamala Harris has not yet been polled in this state, and given her performance in the other well-known blue states, it is quite possible Illinois will be a solid state in November. Harris is also not on the Rhode Island poll yet, so we shall be taking Biden's most recent one, which puts the state in the verge of the likely category, showing a 7-point lead to the DNC. Rhode Island has been a safe blue state since 1992, falling down to the likely category when Biden won in 2020 by 10 points. And now, these numbers have fallen down even further. Will Harris's campaign have enough momentum to take Rhode Island back up to the safe state category for the DNC? Washington is the first in this likely category to present a poll with Harris, and it's coming strong on the verge of becoming a solid state for the DNC, with a current 14-point gap for the blue side according to the latest poll from Public Policy Polling. Washington is a long-lasting Democratic state, and it's very likely that Harris will be able to put the state in the deep blue category by November. Maine also shows a 14-point lead to Harris, according to the latest poll by University of New Hampshire Survey Center amongst 1,445 likely voters. If third candidates are thrown in the mix, the lead falls to 8 points, still keeping it in the likely category range. Maine's 1st congressional district also falls in the likely category for the blue side with a margin of 8 points. New Hampshire presents a 7-point lead to Harris, according to the latest poll by Emerson College amongst 1,000 registered voters. This is a great result for the vice president, considering that the state was in the red swing category before Biden's dropout. And lastly, New York joins the likely blue party with a 12-point margin for Harris, according to the Siena College poll, with 1,199 likely voters. This is definitely a comfortable gap for Harris to win in November. And so Harris finishes up the likely category by adding 80 electoral votes to her tally, bringing it up to a total of 175 votes. Moving on to Trump's likely states, we have Mississippi. The state comes from being a safe red bet in the past couple of elections to now a decreased lead of 9 points when polled against the incumbent president. Will Harris's candidacy raise the margin for Trump or narrow it even further? South Carolina has been Republican for the past 4 decades. In 2016, Trump carried that state by 14.3 points, and in 2020 by 11.7 points. Similarly to Mississippi, the only polling data we have here is against Biden, where Trump leads by a 12-point margin according to a poll conducted by John Zogby Strategies with 510 likely voters. Iowa also joins the group. The latest poll by Signal amongst 600 likely voters showed a 12-point red lead. Trump carried the state in 2016 against Clinton by 9.4 points, and against Biden in 2020 by 8.2 points. Everything points to a similar result in November against Harris. Now, this state is a big win for the GOP. It's the second state with the highest amount of electoral college votes on the map, Texas. No Democratic candidate has had a chance in the state since 1980, and even though Biden spent a lot of resources campaigning in Texas in 2020, and yes, was able to take down Trump's numbers in comparison to the prior election, it was still a red carry by 5.6 points. The latest poll from this state puts Trump in the lead by 9 points. The last state in this category for Trump is Ohio. Unfortunately for the DNC, Harris shows no impact against Trump in Ohio. The former president currently leads with 10 points, just like he did against Biden before he dropped out. And Trump sums up a total of 166 electoral votes. As you can see, he is still behind in the race. But the red wave will soon start to make a surprising comeback. If you want to stay informed about the development of the presidential race and find out the impact that the new Democratic candidate will have, don't forget to subscribe to Ballot Breakdown. Now moving on to the leaning category, where the respective candidate is leading by a margin higher than 2 points and lower than 7 points. We'll start with Harris's lean states. Oregon is presenting a 5-point lead to the blue side according to the latest Hoffman Research Group poll with 700 likely voters. But the truth is that this is a considerably low margin for the DNC since Biden carried the state by 16.1 points in 2020. Minnesota also shows a 5-point lead to the DNC according to the latest Redfield and Wilton Strategies poll amongst 538 likely voters. Trump got close in 2016 when Clinton carried the state by a narrow margin of 1.5 points, but Biden raised the gap to 7.1 points in 2020.
Before bed tonight, try saying these 9 simple words to help attract money while you sleep.
Given Harris's quick takeback on the state, we can predict a similar result to the last election in November. And this closes the blue-leaning states by only adding 193 electoral college votes to Kamala Harris's total. Moving on to the leaning states for Trump, we start with Virginia, presenting a 4-point lead to the former president according to the latest Florida Atlantic University poll. Virginia was a likely state for Biden in 2020, where he led by a margin of 10.1 points. If Harris does not manage to win Virginia in November, this state shall be a shocking blow to the DNC. For now, its 13 electoral votes join the red side. Indiana and Arkansas were previously both deep red. So for them to be showing in the lean category is not good news for Trump. Arkansas has been loyal to the Republican side for the past 6 elections and currently remains Republican with a 7-point gap, according to a poll conducted by John Zogby Strategies amongst 385 likely voters, putting the state on the verge of becoming a likely state. Indiana presents a 4-point gap according to the most recent poll from John Zogby Strategies, conducted amongst 418 likely voters. This is way below expected, considering Trump's win of over 16 points in 2020. Nevada is coming out of a recent tie between Trump and Harris right into the red-leaning category. According to the last Trafalgar Group poll, Trump is currently in the lead by 3 points amongst 1,000 likely voters. But one must also consider that this was a Republican-sponsored poll. Kansas shows up in this category as proof of a decrease in Trump's support. In 2016, Trump had a huge win in Kansas by a margin of 20 points, and in 2020 it fell to 14 points. Now, the latest poll shows a 5-point red lead. North Carolina also enters this category. The latest poll by Trafalgar Group presented a Trump lead of 4 points amongst 1,000 likely voters on a head-to-head matchup against Harris. The last poll by Signal with 600 likely voters shows that if third parties are added, the gap falls to a 3-point margin. And now the last state in this category is Florida and its 30 electoral votes. According to the last poll by Redfield and Wilton Strategies, Trump leads by 6 points against Harris amongst 976 likely voters. Trump finishes this category with 254 electoral votes, currently ahead of Kamala by a whopping 61 votes, and just 16 votes shy of the magic 270 to win the presidential race. Now we'll get into the swing states. These are the ones that will ultimately decide the next U.S. president. Here, the respective candidate leads by only a margin of 2 points or lower. New Mexico arrives in the blue swing category, showing a decrease from the last election to the Democratic side. New Mexico has voted for the DNC candidate consecutively since 2008, and in 2020, Biden carried it by a comfortable margin of 10 points. Now, the latest poll shows a 1-point margin to the Democrats. However, one must consider that this poll was sponsored by the NRSC and Nella Louise Demenci, Republican partisan sponsors. When looking at more neutrally funded polls, we can see a larger gap for the Democratic Party. Michigan has been decisive in both past elections. Trump took it in 2016 by 0.22 points, and Biden carried it in 2020 by 2.8 points. It's a very disputed battleground, currently on the blue side with a margin of 2 points according to the last Insider Advantage poll with 800 likely voters. Now let's check Trump's swing states. Starting with Pennsylvania, the last poll by Trafalgar Group shows a 2-point lead to Trump against Harris with 1,000 likely voters. Even though it's a Republican-sponsored poll, this gap is confirmed by a poll from Redfield and Wilton Strategies, which is not funded by a partisan group and shows the same 2-point lead for Trump. New Jersey was a deep blue state in 2020 with 15.9 points. Now, the latest poll by United 24, a Republican-sponsored poll, shows a flip of 2 points for Trump amongst 477 registered voters. Trump takes Wisconsin by 1 point according to the Insider Advantage poll amongst 800 likely voters. Wisconsin is another important battleground. It has been considerably Democratic throughout history, but Trump carried the state in 2016 by 0.76 points. The margin was wider against Biden as Harris seems to be opening the roads for a Democratic flip in November. Arizona is also showing a 1-point lead to Trump according to the last Trafalgar Group poll amongst 1,000 likely voters. Another Republican partisan-sponsored poll amongst 500 likely voters shows a flip to the blue side by 3 points. So even though Trump will be taking Arizona's 11 electoral votes on the map, anything can happen in November. Moving on to Georgia, where Trump is leading by a margin of 2 points according to the last Redfield and Wilton Strategies poll amongst 1,128 likely voters. This is the last of Trump's battleground states, as the only part of the map we have left to fill in is Nebraska's 2nd District, which is currently showing up as a tie in the latest poll. With all the states filled in, the current polling data shows a victory for Trump with 324 electoral votes versus Harris's 200.
Đó thì cái poll ngày hôm nay, cái poll có BB á, là ông Trump là được 324 phiếu cử tri đoàn. Còn bà Kamala thì 213. Thì hai cái tiểu bang mà chưa có nắm chắc á, là New Mexico cũng như là Michigan, chưa có tính hai tiểu bang đó. Thì đây là cũng cái tin tốt hiện nay cho ngày hôm nay, nhưng mà bà Kamala Harris thì lúc này bà chứ lại cái ông Kim đó là cũng đi vận động cũng dữ lắm, chứ không phải là thường đâu. Thành mình cũng mong mỏi tất cả quý vị đồng hương của mình đó, dù đảng nào cũng vậy, dân chủ cộng hòa, thì cũng nên ghi danh để mà đi bầu để ủng hộ cho ứng cử viên của mình. Dạ, cảm ơn.